Welcome back folks, today we're going to go through the basics of combat in Crimson Desert. This game doesn't have difficulty options, but it scales enemies and enemy types through regions, giving them better gear, and later on you will have to pay attention to enemies having gear which does fire or ice damage, alongside more HP and bosses which have that same type of attacks. Fighting is very straightforward in this game at the beginning. You will start off with your basic armed combat attack that does a series of attacks onto the target that you can also hold the button for, you don't have to spam it to chain it, finishing off the enemy with a cool animation. Your starting right attack will be heavy attack, or in the case of skills, the forward slash that makes Cliff step forward into the enemy to initiate much more damage, not just to a single target but to multiple targets in its range. And you will see once you do a finisher, enemies in that area will also stagger, making them move a bit away from you. That's your way of keeping distance between enemies. Besides that, you have your spinning slash and stab attacks that you can initiate with your shift left or shift right mouse click, or the controller equivalent. I don't play on a controller, but in your skills tab you will see what those buttons are easily. Spinning and stab attacks are great for staggering opponents and breaking enemy stands that have a shield. You can of course break their stance with a series of normal attacks, but spinning slash and stab do it much more efficiently. Spinning slash also does more cleave damage, meaning that enemies which are close to you get hit as well, while stab is more efficient to target enemies which are in front of you, but the primary use of it is for stronger enemies in front of you or a one stronger enemy to stagger them. Then you have the turning slash ability, which on keyboard and mouse you do by pressing left and right mouse button at the same time. That targets everyone around you and is great for clearing enemies if you are surrounded. Also in the skills, later on you unlock abilities where holding those buttons will charge the attack more by giving you that extra damage. It's same for stab or turning slash. So over time you will get the hang of when to use it, but combining these attacks initiates chaining them, or well puts you in the combat flow without interrupting your attack and making Cliff just stand in one place doing nothing. These turning slash attacks and so on cause spirit, but you replenish your spirit as you do basic attacks. That's why spirit is also very important besides stamina, which drains as you fight for long. But this game is great as it really replenishes your stamina fast, and during combat you will rarely run out of it, only if you spam it too much. There are two types of targeting enemies. On PC, if you hold control, Cliff will go into defensive mode, which also shows you the enemy you are targeting, while the caps button or the controller equivalent will lock onto the target, which I rarely use, only for bosses and maybe flying enemies. Besides that, I really don't have lock in onto a target as Cliff will attack in that direction anyway. Now a lot will depend what you use as Cliff. So sword and shield, where defense is much better as again you have a shield to use. Two-handers are a bit slower but initiate huge damage. Dual wield is faster, and even though it technically does less damage, your attack speed is much higher. Also using spear can be good for that mix between two-handed weapons and speed. A lot of just depends on what you want to use. Of course I can also talk about Damien and Unka, which you get later on in the game, but honestly Cliff is the main guy in this game and this is a beginner's guide, but even for them the same thing almost applies. There is also unarmed combat, so you go hand to hand. I mean, you can go into this, but I would not recommend it at the start of the game, as only later in the game you will get better buffs with gloves and boots you wear. Because if gloves and shoes in this game have attack, that attack is only applied if you use fists or your legs on the enemies. It does not transfer onto your weapon, but more on that in the Abyss gear, or well, the socket section of this video. Dodging and parrying is extremely important in Crimson Desert, especially dodging, as it's one of the best ways to avoid enemy attacks. And when you start fighting stronger enemy types like black bears, or even later on some mechanical enemies, they will have a much bigger attack palette, meaning that these bleed bandits you meet at the start of the game are basically tutorial mobs. Trust me, they are nothing compared to what you encounter later, where enemies are a lot faster, stronger, and will punish you a lot more for your mistakes. If you do a perfect dodge, you will see that little green outline with cliff, and the game will slow down for a second, also replenishing your spirit. That means you did a good job. But during the fight you will constantly dodge, so you can keep this distance between larger group of enemies and sort of know your surroundings. This is important for elites, as I call them. That's those enemies which look like a red star on the map, not a circle. They do a series of attacks as their hands go red. In that case, just start dodging as they attack. You will get the timing over time. Don't try to attack during those series, it won't end up well for you. Then there is parry, which happen with the control, or well, the controller equivalent button. So if you're defending, you hold the control button, but if you want to parry, you're going to press it at the right time just before the attack, parrying the enemy and giving you the opportunity to attack. Later on you will get a skill that does that parry even better, so if the enemy attacks you and you parry at the exact same moment, it will deny their attack. But dodging is great to always use. I mean, parry you can focus on if you're fighting smaller groups or a very stronger enemy, like a singular one, but if you're sure you can time it, do it. Sometimes it's just better to defend and dodge than try to parry itself, because a lot of that will depend on what sort of build you want for your character and what sort of enemy you're fighting. Now the reason why I say to keep distance between enemies is so that you can group them in front of you. So I usually dodge and move backwards so they get in front of me, meaning that my attacks will be able to cleave them much better. I mean, if you haven't played MMOs or similar titles, as I already said, cleave means the damage you do transfers onto nearby enemies, so you can do damage to them more than rather just, one enemy in front of you. Enemy AI in this game will try to circle around you. They're actually quite good at that, so don't allow it, because if you're attacked from all four sides, you will most likely take damage. But don't worry, this is not a Souls game, you can always heal. It's okay if you take damage. The only issue is later when you get enemies that have much better weapons and are much stronger and will punish you a lot more, so it's good to train it to a point where it becomes natural. Also, some enemies throw bombs, use flamethrowers, or these like ice machines that do freeze, so being in one spot means if a bomb lands below you, you're going to take a lot of damage. You can of course charge into enemies and do your combos and all of that cool stuff, but when you do that, try dodging away to create some distance, because it will going to group the enemies in front of you, so you can prepare for another combo while keeping all of them in line. Besides melee enemies, ranged enemies, first off archers, and later on, they're going to have guns. They can be very annoying because they do constant damage. They are very precise. You can parry and defend against their attacks as well, but it's harder and not needed. So during fights, your tactic should always be to run towards them to take them out first, so you can focus on the melee ones, as they also tend to break your attack chain when they hit you. Not so much with arrows, but later on with guns, definitely. They also have less armor. They usually wear cloth one at start of the game, of course, so tackling them will be a lot easier. And they are cunning, constantly running on higher platforms or running away from you to have that distance, so you cannot actually hit them. So get them first out of the way and then focus on melee ones. Just run around the enemy group, it's very easy in that sense. Archers or other ranged enemies who are in towers, you can take them out with heavy attack, as you just go in front of the platform and do that turning slash, and wooden towers will crash, so no need to climb the ladders to go after them. Actually, most of the wooden like platforms in this game, you can just do that and it's going to just destroy them, simple as. Speaking of skills, my advice is to first focus on leveling up armed combat alongside spin and stab attacks, with turning slash of course, as unlocking the full level will make you have additional bonuses, as you can see if you go into details, where the attack ignores enemy armor, meaning it will be a lot more useful. All of the other more flashy abilities like jumping then smashing onto the enemy, you can save those for later, as I think those are more when you start experimenting everything with your attacks. I mean, this game has a lot of flashy stuff you can do, like even grabbing and throwing an enemy off the cliff if you are close to it, or then using your shield to bash into them. That's also kinda useful. But get your fundamental skills first, as that damage matters most. There is also Blinding Flash Finisher, extremely useful skill, where what you do is you reflect your weapon. On PC you hold the right mouse button during that time, or the controller equivalent. Again, in your skills it will tell you what those buttons are. Blinding Flash Finisher makes it great to clear out normal enemies fast, especially in big groups, as it also staggers everyone around you, giving you breathing room. And Blinding Flash itself is fantastic, as it makes stronger enemies blind for a quick second, stopping their attacks, giving you entry to start your own combo. Bows are alright, nothing crazy until you get infinite arrows from the Poronin village. It's that village here with shies, those green hipsters. The first research you do there will grant you that. It's not going to make you shoot forever, but multi-shot and stuff like that is better because you don't have to worry about buying arrows. It just does a little cooldown and you have your arrows back. Plus you have poison arrows and fire arrows, which are great in the case you just want to clear out some stronger enemies, but I really don't use bow all that much at the start of the game. So Abyss gear, or well sockets as you would call them, you start getting them as you play the game, through drops, rewards, items you find and so on. And with this switch right here at the start, you can embed those gears into your weapon, or extract it, or create sockets to even put it. You will see when you get a weapon, if it has those circles, it doesn't mean that you can put the socket right in. It means how many available sockets you can actually have. You first have to unlock it with this same witch, and this is quite expensive, so don't waste it randomly, but extracting and embedding sockets is almost free, so nothing to worry about. Regardless of the weapon you have, you can extract a socket out of it and place it somewhere else. You have sockets that you can put on weapons, gloves and boots, and on your armor in the case of defense. But watch out, if you say, ah great, I have +1 attack and my weapon sockets are already full, let me put that on my boots or gloves. Remember, that attack will only be used if you are using gloves or boots to attack, so your fists or your legs. It does not give you overall damage. That's not how it works in Crimson Desert. The reason for it is, well, unarmed combat, so these attacks can be viable. If you use a sword, put it on your weapon or your sword. But attacking with your leg kicks, even if you use a sword, means that if you use your boot attack or the leg attack, that attack socket will work in that case. So you can put it on your boots even though if you use a weapon. Your gloves, you won't use them all that much. Over time you will also get Abyss gear that has its own skills. So as you can see here, you have gear that if you put on your weapon, your right mouse attack will do a different attack, usually a stronger one. Besides that, you have ones which are activated differently. It will always say what it does, so it's pretty much, the ones you get from bosses here and there and how you use them. Reason for this is that this game does not force you to use the best weapon to find. So if you find a good weapon which you like and you like its design and it has sockets, you can extract stuff from the other weapons and make the weapon you really like do the same. Just remember, creating sockets here costs arm and the legs, so don't just spam sockets. Price also differs on how many sockets you want, plus what type of weapon it is. Later weapons, the stronger ones, you obviously need more silver. And also later on in the game you even get some more stuff to enhance your weapons with, but that's mid to late game, no need to worry about it for beginning. Food is extremely important in Crimson Desert, it will be your best way of healing. At start, sure, cooking some basic meat is fine, as your health pool will be low, but later on when your health pool increases and enemies start doing a lot more damage, it won't do you great, so learning and finding recipes is important. Better recipes provide more HP during healing, but they also give you spirit. Do not sleep on spirit in this game. It's crucial in combat later, especially against bosses, because last thing you want is to focus meditate when boss attacks, so you slowly replenish it. Rely on food more in that way because, well, it's going to be a lot more useful and you're going to need it. but also some food replenishes stamina and it gives you resistance to elements. Very, very important later on. There are some bosses in this game and even just regular mobs, horrible ones when they attack because they're going to freeze you, they're going to burn you, and that's not going to end well in your case if you don't have that defense. Now, food resistance doesn't last too long, but that's the point of it because you will use it more often. And yes, it does require more items to prepare, for sure. So that's why early on against bleed bandits, don't waste great food. Simple meat is enough against them, but boss fights and enemies in later zones, oh, you will have to do it, trust me. This game is not that hard, but enemy types become very rough later on if you're not prepared and if you don't refine your gear, which I already covered in my beginner's guide video. I don't want to repeat myself here. Your armor will also give you resistance to ice or fire and so on, but it won't be enough to save you. Besides food, you have elixirs that you can brew or buy, but it's the elixirs that give you that protection for longer alongside the ones that give you more attack speed, which matters a lot. Attack speed in Crimson Desert is sometimes a better investment than raw damage. I have proved myself that multiple times as it staggers bosses much more than anything else, so elixirs at start save them. Later on you will have to use them, they are very, very important. On top of that, they can provide you more spirit, health and so on for some time, like 5, 10, 15 minutes. Always good to be prepared. Some food you can only make on special cooking tools. You have one for example in Hernan Castle, which gives you a lot more health, but you can save those for very tough bosses later on. It's not needed in my opinion until you reach like chapter 6 or 7. There are large combat encounters in this game, like clearing quarries and cities and so on, without spoiling stuff for you. But one example you are seeing is this quarry. Here it's extremely important to keep distance between enemies and tackle it group by group. Also, these big liberation missions have this on the left. You see like barracks, training grounds and almost always a boss in the end. Save the boss for last. First off, drop enemy strength and reinforcements to 0%, but as you're doing that, also destroying barracks and similar buildings will make them heal less, have less attack and less defense. To destroy these buildings, literally approach the building and destroy it with a heavy attack as you would do to bring down towers. It might take a few hits, but it matters in later stages of the game. After you're done with mobs, then move on to the boss. Last thing you want is to fight a boss and then also have a bunch of normal type enemies rushing at you on all sides. Sometimes it's difficult to avoid it as it might be a camp where the boss, is right in the middle of it. So you try to clear as many enemies as you can around him before entering that central area and destroy the towers so the ranged enemies don't spam you. Other than that, it just takes time. It is what it is. You can also summon your companion or with some Greymins later on if you need some extra help. Now, bosses in Crimson Desert range from all kinds, to normal humans with fast or heavy attacks, to some really annoying ones. Honestly, bosses for me in this game are hit or miss. Some I absolutely love fighting, while some are just a slog, where they are constantly teleporting or do their dumb attacks where it's not even about learning the attack patterns, it's just trying to survive it as much as you can before you have an opening. One example I can show you is the Cube Walker Litus. You see, attacking him normally does not cut it, but if you spam force push into him, you're going to stagger him to the point where that stagger line goes up. He goes down, or well, his cube head goes down, and then you can spam attack it for full damage. Other normal type enemies you will rely on dodging at the right time and just looking at their movement and timing it. Might take you a few tries for once, mostly if you rush the game. If you come prepared with good gear and protections, you will have much easier time, logically. Besides that, I cannot show you how to fight every boss to avoid spoilers, but take your time, don't rush them, and make sure to combo them with heavy attack so you get a chance for them to drop on the ground, giving you some few extra hits. Now we went through the basics. Honestly, my final tricks and tips for you is to practice dodging and parrying. It takes a bit, but once you unlock more stuff and you get the hang of it, it becomes easier. Camera-wise, game can also go crazy sometimes. So during larger fights, it's best to zoom out your camera from cliffs so you have better visibility and ultimately have fun and chain your combos as you like. That's where that flow comes into place and you will be able to be much more efficient. Also, battles that explode in this game are not red, they have X on them. Don't hit that or you go bye-bye. But you can use that for sure against enemies like, if are larger groups, if you throw, an enemy into one. It's freedom you have here, so just as I said, have fun. And that's all the basics I can give you. It comes from my own trial and error and mistakes I made. If this video helped you, consider liking and subscribing for more Crimson Desert, and check us out on Twitter and Discord. Huge thanks to my Patreon supporters, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye bye.